This Just In with this Just In as your host, Justin Core. That's why the show is named that. This is a show where we take a deeper dive and a better look at the stories most important to you with the people who bring you those stories. Today's guest, a regular correspondent, an old friend, the guy most willing to do this show on a regular basis. It's Joe Parris, everybody.
Have I been on half the episodes?
Maybe more than that. It might be a majority at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you.
My wife texting me.
Yeah, why don't you take that off the desk? We got some business to do here. But no, I'm glad to be back on This Just In with This Justin. I still think they should have called this show Just Incredible, but
that was already taken. I'm not into gimmick infringement. I see you out there, Justin Incredible. Joe, we're going to talk about election results here, specifically local election results, because I think a lot of people just ad nauseum for the past year or more have heard about the presidential election and now those results in the past week. We're going to talk about the local election results, really what that means for the future of cities, counties, states, actually just one state, Idaho. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I will say,
in
as
this
a
area.
tease, I think that the national scene definitely did play out here in Idaho, and we can talk about how that looks. But I think there's a lot of folks that I've spoken with that are like, oh, well, Idaho is going to go red no matter what. And correct. But there is some data points and there are some things to look at that are interesting that I'm not sure some were expecting.
Ooh, what a tease.
What a tease.
That's also why you're on here so
right.
much, while you're a regular
So good.
correspondent. First, though, Joe,
Yeah.
you're going to be a dad here very soon.
I think about 2 weeks away is what we're aiming for. It's awesome. In a good way, I've had some sleepless nights just excited for things that like you don't think about, and having a son, I would have been thrilled to have a daughter too, obviously. But,
Sure.
Having a son, there are certain things that I'm really looking forward to,
Nice.
My niece and nephew, I love hanging out and like playing baseball and teaching them things. And like, there's just like this feeling of like, I get to show my son Batman for the first time. You know what I mean? Like my favorite comic books. So I don't know. I'm starting to daydream about all the fun stuff now that we're getting really close. And like, I know about the difficult stuff. We went to Costco and we bought a ton of diapers over the weekend. So I mean, I'm ready. I'm excited. We're very close. So it's a good time.
Ooh, boy, you're going to be buying a lot of diapers. But
We already pre-bought all of them. Also,
all the diapers.
I know Costco's not a sponsor of This Just In, but they have everything there.
They could be.
They could be.
Costco. Just saying, Costco. There's an opening there and an opportunity. So
Right there.
You've already said that you've bought like all the diapers. So is that just like when the kid reaches like when your diaper supply reaches a certain point, it's like you got to be potty trained. Like by this point,
it's the final countdown.
we got 20 diapers left.
And look, he's going to learn real quickly. We have a budget at our house, and when we hit that budget, I don't know. Some folks have been like, well, you could use cloth diapers. Like, I could.
Yeah.
I
I think my mom did that for a while. I was never willing.
Yeah,
No,
I'm good.
Absolutely.
No, we
That
do.
is, I see enough of that. Yeah.
We've had some very generous friends and members of the community that have given us plenty of diapers. So we're already in we can pay these forward at some point. We have a lot.
Well, awesome. Yeah. I'm excited for you. It's a great time. It also has been a very anxious time these past few weeks.
It has.
Not only for being a dad, but also with the elections coming up.
Yeah.
A lot of money spent, a lot of ads. Bro, a lot of ads.
I told Brian Holmes this on the desk on election night, I think shortly after 8 or 9 p.m. I was like, well, congratulations. You have hit the point where we will not see any more election ads for a while. Then again, though, I was joking with Dr. Hunt from Boise State on Viewpoint that like we are now on the road to 2028.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
We really are. So time to start getting those ads out there now. Advertising spots are available right now on KTVB, Idaho's News Channel 7. So
and on your program.
And on This Just In. Absolutely. We're not going to play favorites. If the check clears, we'll put your ad on. So again, talking about local elections, the big one on the Idaho ballot, Prop 1, it would have created ranked choice voting, closed the primaries. It didn't just fail. It went down in flames. So we're going to hear more about that right now from your cohort on the 208, Brian Holmes. Roll it.
Ada county is in.
Right around 10:30 Tuesday night.
Where's Secure Idaho Elections, people?
Idaho GOP Chair Dorothy Moon
All these people walking up here right now.
began calling the people who led the opposition to Prop 1 to the stage.
What these people, how many of you saw the Secure Idaho Election website?
Moon also mentioned
Extremely confusing.
Try to rig the election.
the social media videos
Vote no. Vote no.
And vote no on Proposition 1.
a slew of lawmakers made at the State House.
How many of you guys saw those?
Maybe not as many
Proposition 1 is a threat to Idaho
as who might have seen Speaker Mike Moyle's TV spot.
and undermines our confidence in elections.
I do want to thank Mike Moyle. You guys saw him on TV. He got a TV ads out to fight that Proposition 1.
In the end, that fight really wasn't much of a match. 70% of Idahoans pushed Prop 1 away.
It was a team effort. I've never seen Republicans pull together like this.
Meanwhile,
And it was a lot of people who'd been engaged in the final.
the afternoon after for Reclaim Idaho,
You know, it's very mixed feelings. There's no way around the grief, but there is definitely a whole lot of pride in everything we accomplished along the way, and everyone who got involved, many of them involved with this type of thing for their very first time. And maybe most of all, the awareness that we raised about this problem of the closed primary.
some people look at this and go, pride in the fact you guys lost 70 to 30. I mean, that's a pretty good beating.
Well, reform is never easy. You're really asking people to take a big leap in changing something they're used to. So we were never under any illusion that this would be easy.
I mean, you probably didn't expect that result. Or did you?
To be honest, we didn't know what to expect. We knew that a whole lot of forces were aligning against us in the final stretch, and we knew that we were facing serious headwinds. But it was clear going into it that there was some real hardening of views, especially along party lines in the final stretch, which was very unfortunate. Because this was always a cross-partisan effort, really intended to benefit all voters regardless of party.
We heard a couple times if they had done it separately, not combined the two, open primaries and ranked choice voting, that might have appeased some of these voters. They like one but not the other.
Yep.
So in hindsight, would you have broken them up?
At the moment, it's not clear that a different design would have got a different result.
This claim that it was all pushed by outside money and this narrative that this is outside forces trying to change Idaho's politics and Idaho's elections. Do you think that outside influence hurt you guys?
I don't think so. I think it was important for us to raise the funds we needed to get our message out. It would not have been wise for us to not do everything in our power to get our message out to the voters.
Now what? Is there a chance that you come back with one aspect of this or try it again?
Well, we do believe that there's a majority of voters out there who believe that the current system is broken, who do believe that the closed primary is a serious problem. We don't have any concrete plans right now, but we're definitely not giving up the fight, and we're definitely not giving up on the long-term mission of making government more accountable to the people it's supposed to serve. So we're not done yet.
Okay. So they say they are not done yet. And yet again, 70-30. Joe,
Yeah.
Did you, we talked about this before the election. Thought it was going to be close, really kind of the big issue on the ballot. It was not close. Did you expect them to get blown out like that?
I didn't, and I think one of the things that I didn't calculate into my opinions on, how it would go is there are so many people that walked into the voting booth on election day that I don't think had ever heard of Proposition 1.
Right.
And it's not for a lack of effort.
Yeah.
But in the political sphere, you find yourself talking to people who were so plugged in about it. And then you realize, a human element in this is that on the ballot, if, statistically, if people don't understand or don't know what it is, they'll just say no.
Yeah.
And that definitely played into it for sure. But I spoke to Idahoans who were in favor of the open primary, but did not like ranked choice voting. And there's all the questions of why didn't you split them up? Would you have done that? That's just not what Reclaim Idaho was looking to do. They had a specific, initiative they were looking to pass. I also know that the open primary is something that is, can you just do the open primary and then do the regular general election? You could. Is that something people would go for? So I thought that it was very interesting that it was a resounding no from Idahoans. And the more people I've spoken with since last week, it's become clear that there is definitely people that just didn't think that the election system needed to be touched at all. And there's certainly those that said it was complicated. I didn't understand it. I just voted no.
Yeah. Also, I would argue if someone goes into the voting booth and they don't know much or anything about candidates or a measure, they're going to go back to their party affiliation.
Yeah.
And while there was not an R next to, no for Prop 1 or a D, it really did become partisan in the final weeks leading up to the election.
Not even the final weeks. I mean the whole time. Because look, what it came down to, and we talked about it I think 2 weeks ago, it is the Republican Party in Idaho that has a absolute stronghold on the state, protecting their establishment. And you go back to what Dorothy Moon, the Idaho GOP chair, said. Like, you wouldn't want BYU picking Boise State's starting quarterback if you had a big football game. And I get that. And that's a great talking point, and it's a good point. And I think that's stuck with a lot of people. But yeah, I think there was a lot of talk across Idaho about what this will and will not do. And, at the end of the day, I just think the voters didn't have the appetite to change the system.
Yeah. Logistically, could you have ranked choice voting, though, with closed primaries? I mean,
you could. I mean, what you would do is,
if
you had closed primaries, you would just have your candidates produced out of the primaries, and then general election, you would still run ranked choice voting. Would it be fruitful in terms of the change that advocates were looking for? Probably not. But you could definitely, because the way ranked choice voting works is whoever is in the finals, the general election, doesn't matter how they got there. It would just be, you ask people to rank their choice. When you have two candidates in a field, is there a point of doing ranked choice voting? No, there's no point in doing that. But if for some reason Idaho became a political atmosphere where the Republicans, the Democrats, the Constitutional Party, Libertarian, there was a good, primary system that wasn't just usually putting out two parties, then you could do ranked choice voting. But I really don't think we'll see any type of reform like this for a while.
Yeah, Mayville said they're not done, but they're certainly done for now. But what does this mean after this result? I mean, again, they say they're not done, but this is a resounding defeat.
It is.
A little peek behind the curtain. I was on an informational campaign for a bond one time for a county, and that the bond just failed, went down in massive flames, and it was the people just don't want that.
Yeah.
So it was not tried again because it went down 2-1, which this was even worse. So where do they go from here?
Maybe a new issue. I don't know. I'll tell you, it wasn't a lack of effort and a lack of funding. Millions and millions of dollars came into the Reclaim Idaho camp from, and I think one of the criticisms they took was that a lot of it came from out of state. There was a group in Denver, $1 million. I think there was a group in Virginia that had several $100,000. So those groups were pushing ranked choice voting in different states. Idaho is a test ground, and there are questions like, can Idaho be bought? Not on this topic. Not on this topic. It is interesting, though, because if you heard some of the arguments against Prop 1 saying, well, this is out-of-state dark money. I think that was quoting Speaker Moyle from the commercial we saw a million times. Out-of-state dark money. And that's not what Idahoans want.
Right.
I will be so interested if on a different topic there's a lot of out-of-state lobbying or money that comes into the conversation. We'll have to ask these politicians the same questions. Well, what do you think about this out-of-state money coming in?
We could see two big issues coming up in a couple years on that midterm ballot as far as ballot measures. We'll talk about those at a later date.
Great tease.
So, what a tease.
This is a masterclass on how to do production and journalism.
That's long-form storytelling, brother. Absolutely.
Tell a story.
So you talked about people walking into the voting booth, really not understanding something and voting against it. H.R. 5 passed, which now makes it doubly illegal, double super secret probation for a non-U.S. citizen to vote. Explain that and explain how that passed.
I think this was an easier one to read the ballot title and be like having a quick opinion for those that were unaware. Ranked choice voting it's a whole thing. Yeah. If you put on the ballot, HJR 5 guarantees that non-citizens cannot vote in Idaho elections. That's a much easier yes or no for folks in terms of like how they believe.
Sure.
How many folks in the voting booth realize this is already in law, this is already in the Constitution? Who can say for sure? But, you know, I think this was not really a shocking narrative for why this was pushed. You know, if you go back to the legislature and you look at the resolutions and the debates that led to this landing on the ballot, there were some that had legitimate concerns or political concerns about non-citizens voting in Idaho's elections. And one of the questions we had over the summer when this was being drafted and the ballot language was coming up together, it says like non-citizens can't vote in any Idaho elections. Right. So now we'll find out, does that mean corporate elections? Does that mean school board elections?
HOA boards.
And to be clear, I'm not advocating that non-citizens should vote. I'm just saying that there are situations that you don't have to be a citizen to vote for, you know, who could be on the board at Micron, for example. But we'll see. And, you know, when I talked to the Republicans who were behind it, and at the time, he's still the Senate Pro Tem, Chuck Winder. He lost his primary, so he won't be back next year. But I asked him, I said, the Democrats say X, Y, and Z. What are your thoughts? And he would say, well, I think a judge or anyone would read this, that what we're talking about is clear here. And we're not talking about HOA boards.
Right. So, yeah, the criticism there is it's like, oh, non-U.S. citizens like can't vote, again, for anything at any time in any sort of election in the United States. But he's saying, well, look, if it goes to the courts, they're going to be like, come on.
We're not talking about student council.
Yeah, this is obvious.
Maybe they were. I don't know. I'm not judging.
Yeah, he was saying they didn't simplify it too much. They simplified it just enough. Every Senate and House seat in the statehouse up for grabs. The GOP expanded their majority even more. Yeah. They said, I mean, not you, like they had a super majority. It's even more super now. It's like a super duper majority. Did you expect that?
I thought, so we knew going into it there's going to definitely be some battleground districts in the Boise area, in the Pocatello area, and then maybe up in the Blaine County area. And all three of those situations did come to fruition. If you zoom out and look at the national stage, there's been a lot of these graphics where you'll see arrows, red and blue arrows pointing all across. And I've seen people say, what am I even looking at here? Is this wind direction? What this graphic shows is that such a large majority of counties shifted to the right in terms of who they wanted across the country.
Yeah.
So when you thought to yourself, Idaho, you know, we know who's going to likely win, but are they going to go further to the right? That was a question going, and by the right, I mean Republican, conservative. Idaho went with the national trend where there was more conservative voting in areas that were, I guess, left-leaning or blue-leaning in previous election cycles. Yeah. So when you have, you know, a battle between Rick Just and Cody Galloway, for example, one like that was on my radar because Rick Just likely shouldn't have won in the previous election. The only reason he won was because there was a third-party candidate that took votes from the Republican. That did not happen this time, and I can tell you there was coordination from the Republican Party to make sure that didn't happen again. But then you have, you know, seats up in Blaine County. You know, like Ned Burns, he lost his seat. Down in the Boise area, you had some very close races. In Pocatello, you had some very close races. The Republicans, though, got the edge in this election, and I think it's part of that national phenomenon of what did the Republican, Republican leaders across the state, across the country, what did they communicate to their base, and was it successful? And we could do 10 hours on that, but it was.
So was it too successful, though? Like, I have talked to people behind the scenes before when I talk to them about, like, a supermajority for either party, and they say, that can get too big because then it becomes herding cats.
Sure.
Like, I have sort of two questions. We'll start with that. Like, are all these Republicans, they all have R's behind their names, but ideologically there is some pretty major differences here in some of them. Are they going to be all on the same page?
I think there wasn't anyone who came into the election saying like, oh, with the state house in the state of Idaho, it's Republicans versus Democrats. It's Republicans versus Republicans. It's the faction warfare.
Yes.
The Democrats obviously have an impact. You know when there were certain votes that produce, swing votes, so to speak.
Sort of like when they're allying with either the more centrist Republicans or the more far-right Republicans.
And I don't think we have an idea of what the factions will look like at the State House. It's going to be interesting to see where the further right and how they coordinate with the Main Street Republicans. And then you have some of the Republicans that are pretty moderate Republicans. And, like Lori McCann, for example, she's a strong Republican, but she had been criticized and even censored from her own party for votes that she took on the floor and for comments that she made at the State House. So, where does she fit in? How much control is there for these different factions? I know that one major conversation right now is who's going to be the Senate pro tem? Who's going to be leading the Senate? So Chuck Winder, he lost his primary. He's out. I think we see the writing on the wall in the House where Mike Moyle will likely return as the Speaker. But, I've heard some handful of names over on the Senate side in terms of leadership races. And, you're going to have these situations in these major committees where, for example, by the way, the Democrats were like one seat away from losing a valuable seat on JFAC, which is Idaho's budgeting committee. So there was a lot at play here.
Yeah.
It's hard to know how this is going to play out, but you do get the feeling that the people that were elected and the people that are now going to show up in January, they have an appetite for, very specific things that were not successful in years past, like school vouchers.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, it's one of these things where everybody can make a guess, and your guess is as good as mine. But I think we have a strong feeling of what the faction warfare will look like between different sections of the Republican Party.
And that's going to be really interesting because you have leadership elections coming up in a few weeks now.
Yeah, in December,
Yeah, next month. You actually, you'll be out on paternity leave for that, so someone else is going to have to cover
I'll have to
those.
miss that.
Those will actually be very important. Normally people kind of don't pay attention, they don't care, but that's going to really, I think, tell the tale there. So school, supplemental, or plant facility levels passed all over the place, Joe. We're talking Caldwell, Camas County, Cascade, Chalice, Gooding, Hanson, 2 of them down there. Homedale, Jerome, Cuna, and Twin Falls, some of those were running levies again after they failed in May. So overall, people voted for school levy funding. What changed for some of those levies?
I think that the messaging from some of the school districts and some specific schools was very effective.
Yeah.
For example, in Caldwell, back in May, for the first time in 40-some years, they did not pass the levy. And I think that was a real reflection moment for that community and those leaders in that community to say, here's what's at loss here. Here's what happens if we don't pass this.
And they actually did it. They had to get rid of all of their SROs and a number of other changes.
And I heard from specific, families and schools in Caldwell where the SRO conversation came up where they, we're at a time where we want to make sure our kids are safe in school. Why are we getting rid of SROs? It's like, you only have so much money.
Yes.
And I know also in some areas too, one of the, I don't want to say marketing points, but one of the talking points was we would have to cut something like sports.
Yeah.
And, high school sports mean a lot to their local communities.
Absolutely a big deal there. But keeping kids safe, certainly an effective message there. And in some ways, I think you're right. When people see what's at stake and actually see what's lost, that works to pass something the next time. SROs also critical in not just security, but preventing crime, creating positive relationships with kids, being positive impacts on their communities. I talked to the state superintendent of public instruction who said that system, though, where schools essentially have to run campaigns every 2 years to keep all of their funding is broken. It worked this time around, but as you said in May, didn't work for everyone. Do you see this changing maybe next legislative session?
You got to go back to the Idaho Constitution, and you have to go back to what does it mean to have a uniform funded public education system in the state of Idaho.
Yeah.
And it means very different things to different lawmakers. Yeah. When I talk to some lawmakers, it's our job is to fund the schools to keep the lights on. Other lawmakers say our job is to make sure that they have the best books. It's like what degree of funding does it mean to be completely funded in fair and uniform way? And then, now again, in the school vouchers conversation, it's going to be fascinating to see what Idaho does. We've seen what's happened in Arizona. We've seen what's happened in the Midwest. Again, school vouchers was down to 1 vote at the legislature, and it almost made it across the finish line this past session. I have a strong feeling some version of it is going to pass this session.
100%. Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know how that fits into the whole equation. I don't know. We'll find out.
And what does that version of it look like? Yeah, we don't know, but it'll definitely come up. Some non-school levies failed, Middleton and Star Fire levies, also the Canyon County Ambulance District Override levy. What was different for them as opposed to these school levies?
I think that's a tough one because I think taxpayers, they're not like journalists where they can sit at home and they can go look into budgets and they, look into like, well, how well are we funding our emergency services? I think a lot of people realize or assume like, I pay my taxes, I pay into the system and they should have emergency and fire and police services because I've been paying my taxes. I've been doing my part. Why aren't they doing yours or theirs?
Yeah.
I get that. I think too, in some places you have citizens that feel like it's unfair that they're going to get taxed extra for out-of-towners. For example, up in some of like the ski resort areas or the outdoor adventure areas, you have the locals that say, why would I have to have my taxes go up when you have all these out-of-towners coming and getting injured? They never pay a dime in property taxes here, but boy, they'll take up our resources. And I talked with some real frustrated Idahoans on that front. But yeah, I think that was a tough sell for some folks. It was a tough election cycle for emergency districts, and there definitely will be some movement at the statehouse. I'm not sure how significant it'll be, but that's definitely on the radar of lawmakers where you need to be able to have emergency services.
Final election topic, ACHD, which runs the roads in Ada County, had 2 spots up for grabs. Alexis Pickering held on to her spot. Patricia Nilsson won her seat. Both candidates for bike lanes, pedestrian safety, more left-leaning ideals as far as traffic management goes. Is this one of the few elections where we saw Boise's ideology, the city of Boise's ideology, which is left, center left maybe, actually make some hay?
I guess so, for sure.
I guess so.
Yeah, when you put it that way. Yeah, I mean, ACHD is a very unique organization. Politics can definitely be played into it during the election cycle. But when I talk to ACHD commissioners over the years, like, I don't usually get the feeling that it's overly political in the sense of like Republican versus Democrat. But we'll see how it plays out. It'll be interesting. ACHD is very, very unique governmental organization. You would be hard pressed to find one set up like it across the country.
All right. Joe, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's the end of our election conversation.
Oh, okay.
But last time we had Brenda on the show, and we talked about hair.
Sure.
Both you and I are known for our great hair.
Sure.
Just like Brenda, how much should someone pay for a men's haircut?
For a men's haircut, I think probably $30 is the going rate these days.
That's the going rate, but what's the top?
I don't know. What do you mean the top? Like how much?
Like the top end. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I know friends that pay $100 for a haircut.
What? I thought I was paying too much. What?
Yeah, that's more of a lifestyle, though.
I mean, my hair is seen by tens of thousands of people.
No, I know.
Deal.
But like
$100.
Justin,
what do they do for a living?
There are some people that really care about their living and they care about how they look, and spending $100 to go spend a Saturday at the barbershop and get really taken care of. That's just something that's on their priority list. I would rather sit at home and watch college football.
I heard the suggestion from you right there in that statement that I don't care. So that
you
hurts me
care
very much. So let's wrap it up. Hey, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, maybe about how much I'm paying for a haircut, text them right here to 208-321-5614. Use the hashtag JustIN or JustIN, and we'll get to it on the show. Joe, thank you as always. See you next time on KTVB Plus.